So, just want to apologize up front. It's kind of hot down here, and my AC is working overtime. The fan on my laptop probably won't shut down for this entire video. I apologize. I know that can be pretty frustrating. But assuming you can bear with the sound, that probably won't be the most frustrating thing about this discussion. I remember it was probably either my sophomore year or early in my junior year of high school. And my mom was driving me to a Bible study I was leading. Now, I went to a church that was a half hour away from us, and most of the people who went to the church lived a half hour away from the church, but in the other direction. So this drive took about an hour. And while we were still on the main road leading from our house to the highway, my mom asked me what the Bible study was about. She knew I was leading it. She didn't know what it was about. I told her it was about abortion. She's like, "Really? What are you going to say?" So I kind of laid out the outline of the Bible study. Back then, I was still pretty convinced that the right way to do any sort of Bible discussion was to just sort of do what I'd always seen people do. Right? Just yank Bible verses out of context wherever you want. I thought that was how you led a Bible study. It's very rarely how I participated in Bible studies. I was the kid in church who, when they said open your Bible to, I didn't close my Bible when we were done with whatever they wanted us to read. I just keep reading. And generally speaking, I was more interested in what the Bible had to say than what they had to say anyway. This was even at a young age. I was a very difficult child. But when you're leading, you should lead the way other people lead. That's how leaderism works, I guess. So I told her some of the verses I had picked out. We were still on the main road. We had not even reached the highway, right? So we still had easily 45 minutes to get where we were going. And she tells me that she had an abortion. This is very hard for me to believe. Because even back then, I'm old. Even back then, abortion had become this weird sort of rallying cry. Like it was sort of indistinguishable from being Christian. Right? Like, does that make... there aren't a lot of these things that I've noticed in the world. I went to Texas A&M, and there was definitely a group of people who had very interesting views on what it meant to be a member of that community, an Aggie at Texas A&M. But while I was there, someone came up with the genius marketing scheme of Maroon Out, which is where, for each home game, they sell you a maroon t-shirt for that home game. And so if you want to be visibly a member of the community, a supporter of Texas A&M, it's not just a matter of showing up to the football game, which was already crazy expensive. You had to additionally buy a t-shirt on your way into the stadium. I'm a big guy. That was a pretty futile thing, trying to find a big guy t-shirt day of the game. Like, that was annoying. And honestly, I'll be frank, I might have looked once. I don't think I ever bought a Maroon Out t-shirt the whole time I was at A&M. I don't want you to sell me what I love back to me. Like, don't make money off me. That's weird. That's weird. But it worked, man. And honestly, I know several people since then who that's what they know about A&M is you people are weird. You all buy a T-shirt for the football game. There aren't a lot of these things. There aren't a lot of these like touch point identity things that say, I'm one of these, and the way that you know I'm one of these is because I do this, and we all do that. You can't be one of these if you don't do that. And abortion somehow became one of those things for Christianity. In other words, does it make sense? There's a lot of things that you could feel strongly about and still be a Christian. You might think women should absolutely lead a church. You can be a Christian. You might think women shouldn't. And you can absolutely still be a Christian. Now, certain denominations will throw you out depending on which one of those views you might espouse. But the point is, you can definitely still be Christian, but how could you possibly be Christian? If you thought abortion was even okay. In other words, the depth of criminality, the departure from godliness that is abortion, like the just pure gall that you would even think to utter the word with anything other than bile and flame. So obviously my mom didn't have an abortion. She couldn't, right? We talked a bit over that 45 minutes. We didn't talk a lot. I, to this day, could not tell you one thing that was said during that Bible study. I have no memory of anything that happened. I do know I was never asked to lead again. I can only assume it was because with what is the knock it out of the park Bible study, the easiest Bible study you could possibly have, it is indistinguishable from the identity of everybody in that room, right? You aren't even going to, you're going to have to work to manufacture discussion because obviously everyone believes the same thing. You couldn't be in that room if you believed otherwise. I have a younger brother. In between my birth and my brother's birth, my mom got sick. The doctors told her that if she didn't have this procedure, that she and the fetus would die. So it felt like sort of a non-decision. Except this is your identity. So this is one of the most difficult decisions of her life. One with when I was in high school. So going on 18 years after this happened. Well, wait, no. Sorry, going on 14 years after this happened. She still wrestled with it. When people start saying things about you have to trust God, you need to understand something here. 2 years prior to that, when I was born, my mom had just finished up chemotherapy. She was diagnosed with cancer, I think at 19. After she finished chemo, they told her there's almost no way you're going to be. I mean, this is chemo a long time ago. Right? She was one of the first rounds of people who had chemo. Well, no, I'm sorry. She was one of the first rounds of people who had radiation. They told her, we can't see any possible way you'll get pregnant. She got pregnant shortly thereafter. They're like, well, we can't see any possible way that the fetus will be viable. I don't know that I count as viable. But I do know that in every possible way, I count as a mistake. My parents were instructed to not get pregnant. They tried to not get pregnant, and I happened anyway. I was a mistake. They thought I was going to die in the hospital. So if you start tossing around things like, she didn't believe enough, I think you're an idiot. You're either that or you're an asshole. Because she definitely put her faith on the line way more times than you. I don't want to hear it. This isn't about believing that God will carry you. This is about the doctors telling you for certainty the fetus will not live. Do you want to die on principle? And you know what? I bet knowing my mom, she might have. And I bet knowing my dad, there was no chance in hell that was going to happen. It's not like my dad was going to want to care for a a non-viable fetus for the rest of his life. I know that was torture for her, and I know that she survived it. And I know that she got pregnant again. And I bet, and as much as I may have felt like a blessing when everyone told her she was never going to get pregnant and she got pregnant with me, I'm sure that my brother was a blessing just as much, if not more. And that she did this thing that went against her identity. It went against God. It's foundational to the faith, and she violated that. She demonstrated to God she didn't believe, and God blessed her with a child again anyway. And this is why pro-life makes me angry. The word, the term, pro-life. It has nothing to do at all with life. Because this is just a simple equation. You get almost certainly a dead baby and a dead mother, or you get almost certainly a live mother who continues to raise the child she already had and the child she never would have born. If this is about life, you absolutely want to make sure that people have every possible advantage in bringing life into this world. My brother and I don't see eye to eye right now. I love him dearly. I cannot imagine a world without him. It hurts almost every day to know that he is in support of policies and politicians who would see him dead. That's, whew. Has nothing to do with life. And I need you to hear something. If you are like, yeah, you're preaching to the choir. No, I need you to hear something. It has nothing to do with anti-abortion either. This has nothing to do with women's autonomy. I guarantee you, not one person who is on this bandwagon has given 1 ounce of thought to autonomy. And when they do think about autonomy, their response is almost guaranteed to be something along the lines of, I don't have autonomy in anything I do. Why should that be the deciding factor in this? Right? I guarantee you no one's thinking about that. No one is thinking we have to take this away from women. I know that's hard to believe. I know that's what you would do and you would be thinking if you tried to take it away. I know that's your perspective from your context. That could be the only motivation for doing it. And I need you to know that is not their motivation. And so when you come at them saying you're trying to take away women's autonomy, as far as they're concerned, pure side effect. It's purely as the ball rolls down the mountain, it eventually bumps off that stump. right? Like this has nothing to do at all from their perspective with bodily autonomy. In other words, they can completely agree with you that bodily autonomy is a great thing and we should do everything to protect it. But that doesn't mean only things to protect it and only things to protect one way of looking at it, right? In other words, this is not uninformed. And it's not the fight you think you're having. I know we want to go back to history and talk about how this all happened, but the reality is no one was sitting in those conferences with Jerry Falwell. Like none of the people, certainly most of the people who are alive today who believe this stuff, were not sitting in those things. They were not privy to the types of debates that were happening. They didn't, like, talking about why this happened and why people were backing it. Like, those things don't matter. What we're talking about now is something that's in this aspect of faith. And I can tell you, they don't believe this just because someone told them. I know that's what we want to, I know that's the picture we want to paint from outside of this. From the outside looking in, it just looks really silly. It's obviously going against your own interests. Yeah, it is. There are reasons that people go against their own interests, though, and it's really important to understand those. It's really important to understand why people are making these decisions. Because abortion is just a symptom. It's just a side effect of the actual real belief system. It has nothing to do with abortion. It has nothing to do with autonomy. Trying to debate people on these things is irrelevant. I think, let me walk you through a different way of sort of coming at this to really help make my point as clear as I possibly can. I told you I hate the word pro-life because I need words to mean the thing that they say, and it definitely doesn't. It has nothing to do with life. It's also not anti-abortion. I know it feels like that. I know that's how a lot of things are communicated, but they genuinely believe they're trying to communicate with you on your playing field. Everybody's just talking over everybody else. I want you to imagine a world where when we came up with these practices, when we came up with these processes, instead of calling them a very male-centric term, right? Like it's just a weird name, right? Because the perception of it is this symptom or this state has been entered, and we want to short circuit the entering of the state. Does that make sense? In other words, that's what the word abortion means. When you abort so there's a process in place, there's a process happening, and when you abort the process, the original Saturn missions, they had giant parachutes in the capsule. If during takeoff something went catastrophically wrong, they could pop the thing off. I mean, with a decent explosion, pop the thing off, a parachute comes out, and it floats back. That's aborting. Aborting doesn't mean killing. Aborting means ending the process. There is a process in place. We can stop the process. Let's just stop the process. And it turns out that's just one way of looking at it. That's just one way of talking about it. That's one set of words we could use. We use other words, things like terminate. Again, very violent, very male-centric, frankly. We could have said, hey, what we're going to do is induce labor. Now, we induce labor in lots of different ways. Sometimes we do it with medications. Apparently, some people try to do it with bouncing on a trampoline. We try to induce labor in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes we don't even bother with inducing labor and we just have a cesarean. Right? But we have this notion of inducing labor. There are lots of ways. If this was just inducing labor early, okay. Should you be able to induce labor whenever you want? Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah. You're like, well, the baby might not be viable. That's okay. The baby can fend for itself. Like, that's how this works. That's how this works. It's a person, right? It's a person. It's a person. And you know what? If you are willing to take a homeless person and throw them out on the street, I don't understand why this is a different kind of person. It's just a person. So if you want to take this person and evict them from their current home, okay. Right, it's not death sentence. It's not death sentence to throw a homeless person out on the street in the middle of January. It's not death sentence. I mean, it's not very nice. But that's okay. Nobody has any expectation of nice. Nice isn't something we offer as a society. If we just induce labor, would anyone have a problem with it? In other words, are we literally fighting this war on the basis of semantics? And the answer is yes, in lots of different ways, because we're fighting about what person means, we're fighting about what birth means, we're fighting about whether or not protecting all these things matter. Like, we fight about all these things all the time. The words. But if we just called it something that didn't sound awful, would it still be awful? You're like, oh yeah, do you know how it happens? Look, man, hey, hold on. Take a step back. Do you know how amputation happens? Like, it's not pretty. It's not nice. It's not fun. There's nothing about it that's okay. There's like saws and all sorts of, like, it's like when you want to start talking about graphic, most things that happen in the hospital are pretty graphic. Is this any more graphic? No. Do I want abortions to happen? I once volunteered to marry a friend of mine so that she wouldn't have an abortion. Of course she's not going to take it up on it. I am a non-viable fetus. Of course this isn't going to happen. All I'm saying is, like, I don't think it's good. I saw what it did to my mom. I don't want anyone to end up in that place lately. Certainly not anyone I care about. Like, I don't want it to be something you do on a Tuesday. I don't want that. But if it was something you did every Tuesday, I definitely don't want to make it illegal. I want to make it as safe for you as I possibly can. Do you understand? I don't want to make it legal. I want to make it, and I don't want to regulate how many times you can have it. I want to regulate you. I want to regulate the doctors doing it. I want to make sure it's safe. I want to make sure that you're getting the best possible care you can, because I want you to have more babies if you want them. I want you to do that. I want you to have that, and it's worth it to me to make sure that everything we can do there is as safe and as responsible for you as it can possibly be. I don't begrudge anyone this choice. There's nothing about this that's easy or good. But if you're between a rock and a hard place, I think it's a really, really big mistake to take away the rock and the hard place and drop them on you. Like, that just feels horrible. Horrible. Like, unconscionable. If you think those were horrible things that were happening in the hospital, how much worse is that? I genuinely think this is just about words. Let's keep going with our little thought example. Fascinating what we can do medically these days. Just genuinely fascinating. So let's say, because it's all about the birth, right? It's all about just not having an abortion. What if we made it so that the government became legally responsible? Became legally responsible for every unwanted child. In other words, let's bring back orphanages, but we're going to bring them back sort of 9 months earlier than we previously thought they were useful. Right? So you will become a ward of the state, and we will spend every dime and dollar we have to figure out how to make sure that babies can be sort of extracted and raised in test tubes and birthed in labs and then raised by the state. Like, isn't that fantastic? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that what we all want? Don't we all want that? Don't we want that? Right? Because now the baby gets to be a baby from the moment it's conceived. And also, people don't have to have babies that they cannot support or don't want or for any other reason. There are so many reasons. Y'all, there are so many reasons. I don't want to police the reasons. I don't want to decide which reasons are good and which reasons are bad. If we have the technology, shouldn't we do it? And the answer is obviously not. No, what a horrible drain on society. What a waste of tax money. Oh. Really? What a waste of tax money to ensure that every baby is born? It's not worth the money to do that. It's not worth the money. We shouldn't. So what you're saying is it's not worth everything. In fact, it's not worth very much at all. It is worth someone else's life if I don't have to deal with that person. Okay. Hey, I got another idea. Let's not shift this burden to the taxpayers. What if, just starting tomorrow, all births, whether they're wanted or not, all fetuses, whether they're wanted or not, the middle half, so instead of dividing it up into trimesters, divide it up into semi-trimesters, so there's 6 periods, right? So instead of it being 3 months, it's actually a month and a half. So a month and a half, how does the math work? It won't be it. Don't think of it that way. It'll be like, we'll divide it into, okay. Let's look at it as months. So for the first 2 months, the mom carries it. Now, it's still very small. Not transporting, transplanting it would be unfortunate. But we know we can do transplants like this all the time. We do it all the time, right? This is functionally surrogacy. So we could absolutely have the mom raise it for 2 months, and then for the next 4 months, the dad raises it. Right? We just surgically implant the fetus inside the dad. He carries it for 4 months. Now it makes total sense. It makes total sense. And it's just because guys don't have the equipment. So it's still, unfortunately, the last 2 months, it has to be back in the mom just so that it can grow the right thing and the mom won't have to go through so many complications. But she does get 4 months off. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. But it's much more equitable. Right? So if you are going to get someone pregnant, fine. Just understand that 2 months from now, for 4 months, you're going to be on some interesting hormone therapies. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. And once it's done, once those 4 months have passed, you'll just sort of give the baby back to the mom for the remaining 2 months. Can be carried to term. And then whatever inducement you want to do can happen just fine. And we just do that every time now. Like, it's just part of having a baby. Right? And you might say, well, wait, what happens if the guy doesn't want to do that? Because I don't know a lot of guys who'd want to do that. Well, it's not about what. This is just what's going to happen. It's not what. This is how it works. But that's not natural. It doesn't matter if it's natural. That's how it's going to happen. We can just decide these things as a culture. Just like we can decide a fetus is a baby or a fetus is a person. We can decide that. And that's fine. We decide it. That's cool. We can decide it. It's not a problem. We can also decide, because we can just decide it. We can just decide it. We can just decide that for 4 months, every guy who has a baby in the oven is going to be that oven for a while. We can just do that. And it's okay, because you can't abort at any point during this. You have to just do it. You have to just do it. Bet you some laws will change. But here's the thing. right? Like, this is sort of my point, is once we start taking this out of the words, once we start taking it out of the sort of just, I can debate what words mean, and start turning this into, okay, well, let's make some real actual changes that say, okay, if we're not willing to allow this burden to be lifted, then we should instead find ways to ensure it is shared. And if the debate is between this mother and the community, then the community should share in that burden. If the debate is between the mother and the father, that's fine. Then the father should share in that burden. This all seems very reasonable. This is how societies work. This is how policy gets made. Policy finds some friction between two parties, and it attempts to inject a policy in place to make sure that those two parties can agree on how things should happen. That's what governments do. That's what policy is. So we can do that. But nobody wants that. Well, I bet roughly 51% of the people would want that. But everybody else doesn't want that. You know, the other 49 who actually would get to pass the laws. My claim is this. There is this deep thing. And ladies, you may not know it. You may have heard that little thought exercise and laughed really hard. I've been like, yeah, that sounds wonderful. Let's do that. You may have heard, but you probably cannot begin to imagine the anger that lots of guys are feeling at the thought experiment, at the insinuation that they should carry a baby. The anger, the rage. Just literally the thought experiment. Like, I guarantee you I will get death threats. It's amazing. The rage at the thought of having a baby inside you. Not all guys. And not some guys. Well, I guess it's going to be a lot more than some. There are two things that happen inside of Western Christianity. I am hesitant to use the term Christian nationalism. That has a specific meaning to me. I think most people do use it appropriately. The debate isn't about that. What I'm saying is that this is a broader problem. And so the people who don't identify as Christian nationalists, who just identify as Christian, almost guaranteed still identify as pro-life. Again, those two things have become so... And so the problem is, what I don't want to give you is any wiggle room. And if you are a pro-life advocate, if you're a pro-life from the church, see, this is the problem, right? It's not all pro-life people are Christian. But if you're Christian, you kind of have to be pro-life. And I think that's there's two underlying reasons for this. And the first is, there is this deep belief that escaping punishment is the worst sin. And like allowing someone to escape punishment puts you on the block, enabling someone to escape punishment. And if there is one thing that every Christian knows, thanks to purity culture, it's that getting pregnant is proof of your sin. If you get pregnant, that is a punishment. Now, it's a blessing if you're in marriage. I genuinely don't know if I could finish pulling up sermons that say that almost verbatim. I truly do. I think you would get to the end of the internet before you found the last sermon that said it's a blessing in marriage, it's punishment outside. And what you do not do, ever, is allow someone to escape their punishment. That God might transfer that to you. I don't know why you would think these things. Oh yeah, I would. You've been taught them your whole life. The second thing that is also like weirdly insidious is this sort of idea that mercy has to come from God. And I guess this plays a little bit into that other thing. But the point is, we must treat you harshly. We must treat you severely. So that if good comes from it, obviously that's from God. It wasn't from us. We were quite mean to you. But it's our enforcement of punishment allows for God's provision of mercy. I want to be as clear about this as I can possibly be. Every time. Every single time. Every time. Every time you elect a Christian into office, that is what you're getting under the covers. Every time. Every time. Doesn't matter if they've come to terms with abortion. There's still a laundry list of other things. I will be happy to go through as many of them as I can stomach before I get so angry I can't even talk. But this deep belief in punishment, that's what the law exists to do. That's why we have governments. We have governments to punish. That's why they exist. Our laws exist to punish. And I'm about to go off on a rant here, and I'm going to just cut it short because I've already been talking for too long. I'm happy to do that some other day too. When you are debating with someone pro-life versus anything else, what you're really debating is whether or not that person deserves to be pregnant and deserves the only out of begging God for mercy. Any other out is unacceptable. Right? A pregnancy scare, that's from God. A pregnancy, that's from God too. I hadn't heard people say this. I've heard people talking around it a lot, and just felt the need to get it out there. Yeah. You know what? Hold on. Before I hit stop, I need you to hear this. None of that's true. None of that's true. You getting pregnant, that's not punishment. You getting pregnant, always, every time. It's amazing. It's amazing, and I want to support you in that. And the reality is, some of that support might wind up with you inducing labor a little early. And that is a choice that I suffer with you through. And I don't wish that on anyone. I don't wish half the choices we have to make on anyone. I don't know why life has to be so hard all the time. And I don't know why we insist on making it harder. You are not a bad person because you are pregnant. You are, for this brief window of time, superhumanly beautiful. Literally, you are more than human. For a time, you've got like 2 hearts in you. That's crazy. You are a gift. Your pregnancy is even more of a gift. You are now super gift. And And if you decide anything with that gift, I truly, genuinely support you in that. However you intend to live out your life, you continue to be a gift, and don't let anyone take that away from you. Please, please.